Hi guys, and welcome in a new video in the Sketchbook series. Lately I've been reviewing products sent me by companies, so I've been coloring with acrylics and colored pencils, leaving the ink aside. Now I really need to get back to my sketchbook and finally ink again with my beloved pens. After flipping through my sketchbook to decide what to ink, I ended up on this page and immediately knew that I wanted to ink this one. As you've seen, the sketchbook is full of pencil sketches and each time I ink what inspires me the most. I don't follow a specific order. The great thing about a sketchbook is that it's a very personal and intimate object and you can do whatever you want with it. In this video I want to show you the process of inking this page, and at the same time I want to tell you how it was born and what it means to me. Some pages in the sketchbook have more meaning than others. Sometimes I just have a character in mind or I want to study a subject, other times the pages are like a diary in which I paint thoughts and emotions. This page is of the second type, and in fact I started with a phrase, a concept that is stuck in a memory. I did these sketches one evening a few weeks ago after coming home from work. It was quite late and I was tired, but I didn't want to go to sleep right away. Thoughts were swirling around in my mind and I was particularly focused on recurring thoughts. Distant memories that often resurface but of which I only remember fragments. From there I wrote stuck in a memory in the left corner and I started drawing fragments of faces. They are not my precise memories, but they symbolize the fragmentary memories I have. Perhaps sometimes you only remember the eyes, the gaze of a person from a scene 10 years ago or more, and everything else is just blurred even though it has remained anchored in your memory. This is somewhat the concept I started with and which inspired this page. Starting from this, I immediately began drawing cyberpunk characters, as I often do. Sci-fi and cyberpunk are definitely my favorite genres. There is something about them that touches my soul and intrigues me. It is no coincidence that I always say that my favorite anime are the cyberpunk and sci-fi ones from the 90s, which for me is the golden age of Japanese animation. Between the late 80s and the early 2000s, Japan gave birth to authentic masterpieces that revolutionized animation and continue to be relevant for their artistic beauty and themes. Especially in the cyberpunk genre, I'm thinking of Akira from the 1988, Cyber City Oedo 808 from the 90, Ghost in the Shell and Armitage 3 from the 95, Serial Experiments Lane in the 98, and Cowboy Bebop from the same year. Each of these masterpieces was groundbreaking and holds a special place in my memory. Neon Genesis Evangelion in the mid-90s too, of course, even though I have some personal issues with this series, there is no doubting its importance in the history and development of anime. This era was also very prolific in different genres. For example, Ghibli produced Kiki's Delivery Service, Porco Rosso, Princess Mononoke, and we had Lupin III films such as Farewell to Nostradamus and Dead or Alive in 95 and 96 respectively. As well as Perfect Blue, of course, and numerous other masterpieces. Believe me, the list could go on for half an hour at least. The anime of that period in cell animation had a different flavor. It's a bit like lo-fi recordings with their characteristic vintage crackle. There is something about that style of animation, about the themes dealt with in those years, that makes me feel immense nostalgia. And here we are, at the second word on this page, nostalgia. I think one of the main reasons I still love anime today is because of my childhood memories. I started watching anime when I was very young, together with my brother. Back then, it wasn't like today, with thousands of websites offering endless libraries of anime accessible at any time. We had to wait for the MTV Anime Night on Tuesday evenings, which was the only time anime was shown on TV, except for Dragon Ball, Conan, Naruto and One Piece, which were also broadcast at lunchtime after school. Waiting for that one night of the week, for the MTV Anime Night, made it all more special. We enjoyed every moment after waiting a whole week for the episodes. At the time, I remember watching Fullmetal Alchemist, Wolf's Rain, Inuyasha, Nabari, Death Note and, above all, my favorite at the time, Fullmetal Panic, even though it's probably the least known of those now. I can still remember very well the excitement I felt when the episode finally came on and the opening started. For a creative child like me, it was incredible to watch anime, to be able to travel to fantastic worlds and experience incredible adventures. Even today, I still carry those feelings I had as a child with me. I still feel them when I watch interesting anime, and it's as if, for a few moments, I return to childhood, back to a happy time where there were no worries or responsibilities. And somehow these feelings are most enhanced with the cyberpunk genre. When I watch 90s cyberpunk anime and maybe listen to synthwave or vaporwave music, it immediately triggers nostalgia, sadness for a time now past, and happiness for having experienced wonderful emotions intertwined. And the result is my love for the cyberpunk genre. For this reason, every time I draw cyberpunk characters, I play synthwave or cyberpunk music in the background. It's all a combination of artistic stimuli and emotions, a perfect synesthesia. And this helps the creative process, putting me in a specific mood. I would love to know if you feel the same way about anime from the 90s and if you have some favorites from that period. Write them in the comments below because I read them all and I always reply to everyone. By the way, remember also to like and subscribe to the channel and activate the notification bell. This helps me a lot because it's the only thing that allows me to bring new content to the channel. Speaking of future content, I would like to make some videos in which I explore the history and the birth and development of the cyberpunk as a literary genre. I find it fascinating to think how it all started with 4 crazy French guys, including Moebius, who got together and founded Metal Hurlant in the 1974, one of the most revolutionary magazines in the history of pop culture. Without them, we wouldn't have had Neuromancer, considered the first true cyberpunk book, we wouldn't have had The Fifth Element, Blade Runner, Akira, The Matrix, Star Wars, Dune, and so on. It is also interesting to note how the cyberpunk movement developed immediately after the hippie movement between the 60s and 70s, 2 cultural movements at opposite ends of the spectrum. One was based on the return to nature and the other on robotics and unrestrained technology. If you are interested in this topic, let me know in the comments and maybe I will make a video about it. Okay, at this point let's go back to the drawing a little bit. I really like this Cyber Girls design, honestly, and I think I will print it as a sticker and a keychain to add to my other Cyber Girls. It would also look good printed on a t-shirt maybe. I should try that. By the way, I am considering opening an e-commerce site and shipping products, so some honest feedback on the products would help me understand whether they have a market and you are interested or not in them. Lately, I've been drawing several characters in this style, mostly cyber girls, and I think I am slowly finding my own direction. Initially, I was mainly inspired by Aki Bright and Katsuya Terada, and now I am developing characters in that direction that are totally my own. I should also try to contextualize them in a scenario, maybe, make illustrations as well as design for keychains or t-shirts. We'll see what I will do in the future, I'm letting things develop on their own. This character also features elements that I often include in my characters, for example the barcode on the face, which now characterizes almost all of my drawings, and the robotic neck. I like the contrast it creates with the face, and I also used it for my recent character created to test the acrylic markers that Artex sent me. For the robotic parts, I usually use a stronger black, but this time I wanted to make the metal light and shiny, so I used fine pans and hatching. Then I moved on to the hair, and once again I inked it, as I've been doing lately with my characters. So I create a varied wavy pattern and then add the light-dark contrast to create an interesting effect, a bit like waves. The hair is probably my favorite part of this design. I like a lot the idea of continuing this series of cyber characters by giving them characteristics in common, making it clear that they are part of a series, of a project. For this reason, I also assign a number to each one, and this one is the 06, which is written in Roman numerals under her left eye. I was a little undecided, honestly, about whether to use grey for this character and the rest of the page, to give a little bit of depth and accentuate the shadows, but in the end I prefer to stick with pure black and white with line art, also for similarity with the previous characters in the series. Now let's move on to the next character. From here on, there is no particular meaning behind the drawings, I simply continue to draw freely, following on from what I have done previously on the page. For this character, I wanted to do something more cybernetic, where the mechanical parts outnumber the human ones, with a more futuristic and extreme design. I also wanted to continue exploring mechanical designs for the neck, a bit like the girl above. Honestly, I like the angle of the face, and I think this could also become a sticker and a keychain. With so many body modifications, especially to the head, it is difficult to understand whether this subject was human and has been modified to this extent, or whether it started out as a robot from the beginning and has been given a human appearance in the face. I like this ambiguity, honestly. Furthermore, I tried to give him a somewhat peculiar expression, as if he were unconscious but at the same time had a hard, rigid, suffering face. That's why I didn't define his eyes but simply put a shadow behind the visor. It's a bit as if he were asleep and they were subjecting him to some tests or further modifications. The cable behind his head could be supplying nutrients during the operations or maybe installing memories in his brain. I don't have a clear idea of what is happening, but that's okay, it leaves room for different possibilities. In the end, the mechanical neck turned out to be more complex and intricate than the girl's one. Let me know which one you prefer. And finally, we have arrived at the last design of the page. At this point, I didn't really follow any particular idea. I simply threw down on paper whatever was in my head at that moment, like a stream of consciousness. In fact, tell me if you see any meaning behind this drawing, which isn't very cyberpunk and seems out of line with the rest of the page. By this point, it was late and I went to bed exhausted but happy to have ended the day by inking this page. It is certainly not the best drawing I have ever done, it's not a super detailed and spectacular illustration, but this page has meaning and every time I look at it while leafing through my sketchbook, I will remember that. Thank you very much to all of you who have come this far and dedicated some of your time to me, I really appreciate it. Stay tuned for the next videos, which will be released shortly, I hope so, and see you in the next video, guys.
Goodbye.